Okay, we're up to today's daf is Samech Zayin, but we're up to Samech Vav Amid Beis. We're a little above the halfway point of the Amid. Yesterday's daf was involved, very difficult daf. We're in the sugya of what Shinui and Yush vis-a-vis whether it's kaina or not. So we saw that Shinui is kaina. We brought a pasuk for it. Then if not, then if not kain shegazal, then you don't have to return it. You have to turn something else. You saw it's a mishnah. Guys and pays. If you mishana, it goes from wool, it becomes beged. So Shina's kona, and Yush was a question. Rabbi Yosef says that Yush in fact is not kona. Rabbi Yosef said in fact Yush is not kona, and we're picking it up over there. So we're picking up Esavei Abaya, who's Rabbi Yosef again. Rabbi Yosef said Yush is not kona. Now we know that in order for something the Makabal Tumah, it has to have a Torah's kli. It has to have a shem kli. And when is something becomes a shem kli? At the shas of Gemar Malacha, at the time where it's completed, the completion of the kli is made. So now, who decides that? This is a mishnah in Kalim, in the 26th parak of Kalim. Oyresh shabal abayis. You have leather that belongs to the bayis. Machshava mitamasan. If the balabayis is making a piece of leather and he decides that it's finished, at that point in time it's royal mikabel toma. Now it's a kli of vishal avdon, of a tanner. Ein machshava mitamasan. That his machshava that is complete is not, because the person who buys it from him may go ahead and do something else with it. Shel ganif, the or of a ganif, the ganif steals it. Machshava mitamasan. His machshava is mitama. There's your raya that Yish is kind of fellas. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue the brisa, but right then and there, you have a raya that Yish is kona. Because if he was not if he didn't acquire it, so who is he to decide that it's complete? Maybe the next person. The fact that he decided that, the fact that he can go ahead and determine that it's completed, it must be because that Yish is kona. Okay. Shel gazlin ein machshava mitamasan. So according to this, the first opinion of the brisa, the Tanakhama says that by the ganif, a person doesn't know who stole it. He's a ganif. He was stolen clandestinely, and therefore, since he doesn't know who took it, he's miyayish. However, a gazlin who he does know who took it, he's not miyayish. That's the difference between the two. Rabbi Shimon Omer chilav hadvarim. It's the opposite. Shel gazlin machshav mitamasan. Right, because he's miyayish, since this person has the audacity to steal from him. Obviously, he's not scared of him, so he's miyayish. It's not. Okay, the reason is because the Baal was not miyayish. But what do you see from here? You have machlokas vis-a-vis a gana for a gazlan if you're miyayish or not. But the opinion that you're miyayish, you would be the gana for the gazlan who now has it in his jurisdiction would be able to go ahead and designate this thing as complete, and therefore it's Kabbalah Tumah. If you're not the balabas, then you can't. So obviously you have a raya that Yish is kaina. That's the kasha that Abaye asked on Rabbi Yosef. You see that Yish is kaina because you can, obviously it's yours, because you can decide that what I'm going to go ahead and now it's complete. The Shmami no Yish kaina. Okay, Amalei. So Rabbi Yosef told Abaye, Hacha mayaskinon kigon shakitzon. He went ahead and he not only was miyayish, but he trimmed it. He went ahead and he trimmed it. Look at Taisvis, guys. The fourth Taisvis in the bottom. Kigoyin shekitzon, umoyel imayiyush, and the act of cutting helps with yish. Perish, guys. This is considered like a shinoi. It's like you did a shinoi, right? By trimming it, you will mishana it from its status. So the combination. Yish kedi, yish alone, Rabbi Yosef says, is not kaina. Take the yish and go ahead and add the act of trimming it, that kaina. So when it says over here that the machshava of the gana for the gazlan, it's not the yish alone. It's yish in conjunction with an act of what? Of shinoi. Now you'll ask me, guys, what do you need the yish at all? If he's doing a shinoi maisa is kaina, so continues Taisvis, avaluchudei, the act of trimming alone without the yish, loy kana. The lav shini maisahu, because it's only a trim. It's not a complete metamorphosis of the object. In other words, it seems to be the bigger change, the more subject it is to saying, well, that's not the same thing I stole, right? What's the svar of shinui? We saw Vehesh Vesagila Asher Gazal Im Kain Shagazal. If it's in the same state, you went ahead and stole it, you return it. But if it's not Kain Shagazal, why? Because you changed it, so obviously you don't return it. So this is not considered, the act of trimming is not a significant change alone, but in conjunction with Yish. So neither one alone can affect acquirement that you would be the balabas, but together they can. The kasha on Rabbi Yosef said, when did I say Yish is not kaina? Yish kedi. Yish alone is not kaina. We're not speaking about Yish alone over here. We're speaking about Yish that was accompanied with what? An act of kitzia of trimming. Maskav lo rabba barav chan. Okay, so we're good. I love that. I say we're good, so we're good, right? we understand what's going on. Yeah, good. Now, Maskav lo rabba barav chanon v'aloi itzva shanukan. In the Mishnah is there in the 26th parak of Kalim, we mentioned the word tray. An itzva seems to be, according to Art Scroll, is a tray. The itzva ain't tzricha kitsua, and the itzva does not need kitsua. So guys, fear is the kasha, guys. Fear is the kasha. If it does not need kitsua, and it's listed there as one of the objects that he could go ahead and be machshav l'kabel tumah, is a raya that yish kedi is koina. So back to the question. Ein tzricha kitsua did nan kol makom she'ein chesarim melacha. Anytime you're not missing an act to be done to an object. Machshava mitamasan, then the machshava is mitama, makes right for tuma. Yesh chesar melacha. However, if the what is you're lacking an action, a machshava mitamasan, then the machshava of the person for gemar doesn't make a difference. In other words, your machshava is not going to go ahead and. In other words, let's say you begin working on a shoe, guys. You're working on a shoe, so you take a piece of leather and you cut the leather. Okay, I'm machshava. It's a shoe. It's not a shoe. In order to make it a shoe, you have to put it on that piece of that iron, and you have to go. You have to. Notice, machshava can only help if you're not missing anything. So if I put the shoe on that piece of iron and I made the holes in it and everything, right? Then my machshava helps. So, however, chutz min or itzva, except with the itzva, that why? Because an itzva, right, the machshava would go ahead, right, and be mitama. It's sort of that it will be matama. So what do you see? You see that it's speaking about it. It's the Mishnah after that, and it doesn't need a trim. And nonetheless, you're saying yish. You're saying that the ganef or the gazlan, depending on the tana, would hold. You could go ahead and machshav it. Is a raya that yish is kaina. Ella, because of this question, right? Ella Amar Rava Hamilsa Koshi Bei Rabbi Rabbi Yosef Esrin V'Tartin Shnin for 22 years. Talk about living with a kasha, guys. Rabbi Yosef, who said Yish Kedi, had problems with this Mishnah in Kalim for 26 years. How do I touch this Mishnah? How do I touch this Mishnah? If I hold Yish Kedi, it's like kind of, why in the world can you be machshav? Why can a guy for the guys to be machshav over here? If I what? There's no, it's Yish alone, because there's obviously an itzvah does not need any action done to it, right? It's machshav alone with matama. And nonetheless, the Ganef and the Gazlan have the capacity to go ahead and create tumah, that it should be royal kabel tumah, Zacharaya, so he's then in the balabas. And so you see, how they become the balabas? Because the original owner must have given up hope. So you see, Yish Kedi is kaina, and you don't have the connection over here plus of the kitsua, because the itzvah does not need any trimming. That's the kasha. For 22 years, this bothered Rabbi Yosef. Okay. Ifrika, it was not answered. The Yosef Rabbi Yosef Beresha Uparka. And he went ahead and he became Rosh Hashiva and he answered it. Maybe the schus of the Siyata D'Shmaya became Rosh Hashiva, right? He had Siyata D'Shmaya to answer the kasha, right? Shinei Hashem kishinei ma'asadami. Shinei Hashem, when something changes, right, is kishinei ma'asadami. My timer. Pasamei kora eitzim hashta kalim. Shinei Hashem nami. Why does he Shinei Ma'aseh work, guys? First, it was wood, and then it became kli. How does Shinei Shem work? Meikara korile moshcha. Initially, you called it a skin. V'hashta avarzin, and now you call it avarzin. Rashi brings that's the Aramaic for a tray. So the fact that it doesn't, the act of calling it, it's a different name. It's a different name. It's like it's not Kain Shegazal. It's not Kain Shegazal. Memela. So we're back to the original teretz. Just with a little kinech. Yish Kedi is takanat koina. Initially, it was Yish Kedi with a shtickle, Shini Maisa. I have a kasha. The itzra does not shina ma'isa. Oh, but the itzra did have it. It had a shinoi hashem. So the shina take the yish alone, which is nothing, but add shina hashem to it, then it's going to go ahead and be kind. Now it's mashma from here that yish that shina hashem is mamish as good as shina ma'isa, right? It's mashma from the Gemara. They're both the same, right? Mashma from the Gemara that shina hashem. If you look at the bottom twice, you see it's not true. Shina hashem kishina ma'isa dami. Lav kishina ma'isa mamish. The shina ma'isa l'chudei koni. Fellas, shina ma'isa would be koina even without yush. Shina ma'isa would be koina even without yush. Well, come on, gabe ganav v'gazlim. We'll see a bach of a gunboy. The parach v'shina ma'isa miyika l'madiyam leikana. In other words, you see from there is no madiyam well shina ma'isa is not koina. Aval shina Hashem greda. Shina Hashem alone, like Kana Blayush or Shina Maisa. Shina Hashem will not go ahead and affect change unless it has Shina Maisa accompanying it and or what? And or Yush accompanying it. So in the bank of you steal something and you want to remove the chiyuv of Hashava, just to like tzu to Rabbi Chanan yesterday. So you have Yush. If you hold Yush, Kediyas Kaina, right? Right. That might move it, or well, maybe even not there. But shinoi, let's say the Ganim steals something, you have a shinoi. Now, which shinoi? It would have to be shino maisa. It would have to be shino maisa. Shina Hashem accompanied with yish. Shina Hashem accompanied with yish, or Shina Hashem accompanied with shino maisa. Because in other words, you want to remove the chiyav avshava. The kriyas Hashem alone is not enough, but accompanied with the yish, it would be enough. Okay. Fred the Gemara now, on this concept of Shinui Hashem being kaina, we have a problem. That problem is called a marish, which is called, marish is a beam. Bahari marish, we're asking a question. You're telling me Shinui Hashem is kaina, right? Bahari marish, you have a beam. The Ika Shinui Hashem, the Mikara Kishura, originally it's called a beam. The Hashta Talala, now it's called a roof. You have a beam, fellas. You stick it in a house. What does the beam become? A roof. So it's the same beam. The Gemara is not speaking where you made a shini mice in the beam. You didn't change the beam. It was a 2x4 out, 2x4, 2x4 out, 2x4 in. Same thing, except now it's in the roof versus just being out in your backyard, right in the bundle. Yeah. So it's in your roof now. Now it's a shini shame. Good. Do you steal it? Let's say Avrami, I know why I picked up Avrami. Let's say people steal 2x4s and they go ahead and they put it into a building. They put it into a building. It's the 2x4 outside the building. It's a 2x4 inside the building. Good. Now, it's what Shini Hashem said alone doesn't work, correct? So what? Let's say you have, it's called a beam outside, but it's called a roof inside. Would you have to return it? Now there's a halacha like this. Midoraisa, you would have to return it. Midrabanan, we made a takonos hashavim that you could pay for the 2x4 because no one in his right mind is going to knock down the roof to return it. We want to facilitate a return, right? We want to facilitate hashava. So they would say takonos hashavim. It's the takana to go ahead and for people to do tshuva to go ahead and facilitate return. You know what they said? If you take a 2x4, you put it in a building and make it a roof, right? The reason why you don't have to return it is because of the takana of the chachamim, right? Who knows that if you're going to have to knock down the house, you're not going to do it. Mashma without the takana, you would have to return it. But 1 second, you had a shini Hashem.
Is it more than a shame?
You didn't change. You kept the wood. That's why Dafka said you kept it the exact same thing. You did not go ahead and change the wood at all. You didn't change it at all. So what do you want to time it? Is it change or not a change?
It's something else now. It's now part of something bigger.
But it itself has not changed. The only thing that's changed is the shame. So if you hold that shame is a change, then I understand. It's now a roof, right? So that's really what you're saying, Rabbi. It's part of something greater. It's a roof. But if you're telling me the whole reason you don't have to return it is because it's takana, obviously that's not doing the job. That's the kasha. Says the Gemara. Originally it was a beam, now it's a roof. V'tanan, Ala Morish Hagazel Shebanu Bebira, a beam that's built into a house. Shenoitel Damav, you go ahead and pay cash. Mifnei Takana Hashavim. Taima, the reason you can pay cash is Mifnei Takana Hashavim. Because why? Because we wanted to make sure you're going to go ahead and return it. Amid Aleph. Holav Hachi, if not that for the fact that you had a Takana Hashavim, Hadabeina, you'd have to return the beam himself. What do you see? You see that what? There was a Shini Hashem. Good? Guys? But Yedekasha. Okay. And for the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef, guess what? There was no Shini Hashem. There was no Shini Hashem. Okay. The Gemara here is going to quote a pasuk from Yecheskel. This pasuk is describing the Bayis Shlishi. It says, V'chaloinim atumois, v'simoirim mipoy el kisvois ha'ulam, v'tzalois habayis ha'ubim. And the tzalis, the ribs, the sides of the house, ubim. So what does that mean? Rabbi Yosef Marish Shmoyalov Titania. Tzalis habayis elu hamaltatin. Tzalis habayis, these are called maltatin, and ubim elu hamarishois. Do makom rishois. So what's the teretz, guys? Shini Hashem taka would be kaina. You're asking from what? From this was a marish, and now it's what? Now it's a roof? No. It's a beam and it's a cross beam, but it's a beam. It's a beam, it's a cross. So Rabbi went the opposite direction. It doesn't make a difference. It wasn't Shini Hashem. So the whole reason you can give money is because the Kanas Hashavim. But I'll being kaina, you're not kaina. There is no. It's still called the same thing. Rabbi Zera gives a different teretz, and Rabbi Zera Amar Shini Achayz LeBriyasei b'Shini Hashem leHavi Shinoi. Okay, we'll see that in a second. Pirish. Even if you change the name, if you can go back to its original state, that's not enough to facilitate a kinyan. So, if I take wood and I fashion it into a table, there's two ways you can do it. You could put it in is it called a lathe? Avrami, is that a lathe when you
Lathe.
a lathe, right? Yeah. A lathe? A lathe. Yeah, I know. So if you take the wood, you put it and create a spindle, right? That's a shini maisa in the wood. So you do that, you create four pieces of wood that you stole, and you put it, and now that is a shinoi that's einach chaz lebriyasa. It can't go back to its original state. But let's say you're a rough carpenter, you steal the 2x4s, and you simply go ahead and nail them, and you create what? Then you just remove the nail, and you're back to square one. You're back to exactly what you want. So, Shini Hashem is good shinoi. When is Shini Hashem good shinoi? When it's not chaz lebriyasa, when you can't return it to its original state. But if you could return it to its original state, then in fact it's not a shinoi. And over here, this beam, even though it's called something else, it's called a roof. Nonetheless, if you could take it out of the roof, it's an original state. So the only reason you can pay money is because of the Takonas HaShavim. That's the only reason, because of Takonas HaShavim. That's the only reason, and many other reasons. So again, we just to reiterate where we're going with this, Rabbi Yosef said that Shinoi is not kaina. We asked the Kasha and Rabbi Yosef from the Oyros and Rabbi and the skins and everything. And we saw that the Goslin is the balabas now, and we used the Raya is the balabas because he make me his machshava could create tuma. We said because that was an addition to what that was addition into Shina what Shina and Yush you had Shina Maisa. Right, the Gemara, you had a problem. There's the one there that's not a Shina Maisa. You had the Itzva, you had the tray. So we had 22 years of a problem. He was machadish that Itzva is now called. It was called a mushkab. It's called a skin, and now it's called a what? It's called a tray. So that's the Yush plus the Shini Hashem affects the Kinyan. And now we just asked in the last part, Shini Hashem affects the Kinyan. You see, Shini Hashem doesn't affect the Kinyan. Why? V'haraya, because the only reason you have to give back the beam is because of the Takanas HaShavim. Without the Takanas HaShavim, you still wouldn't. You would have to give it back. It's called something else. So two terutzim. In one, it's called the same thing. There's no, or the second teretz is even though it's called something else, since it can go back to its original state, it's chayz lebriyasai. Therefore, what? It's not a shinui, and even though it's a shinui Hashem, but it's not enough to facilitate a kinyan. Fred the Gemara, the shinui Hashem she'eina chayz lebriyasai mi avi shinui. Is a Shina Hashem that does not go back to the original state. is a good shinoi. Like in my case, where you put the wood through a lathe. Okay, so here's the question now. We know that a mikvah, once it's a mikvah, that's it. We speak about guys, mayim she'uvim, passing a mikvah, that's when it's a quart short. You don't have 40 saw. Guys, if you have 40 saw, you can put in mayim she'uvim, it's going to be a good mikvah. If it's a quart short and you put mayim she'uvim, you can pass the mikvah, right? Good. So that's the case over here. Bahari tzinor, you have a pipe. The meikara kitzitzta, right? Originally, it was a piece of wood. V'hashta tzinoira, and now it's a pipe. V'tanya. So obviously, that's what it's a shinoi she'ena chaz lebriyasai. Guys, you went ahead, you took a piece of wood, you turned it into a pipe, you hollowed it out. It's not going back. You put it to the lathe, you put it through the drill bit inside. V'tanya tziner shechakaku, a tziner that first you hollowed it out, ulebesayv kavu, and then you would kaveh it in the ground. Paislas a mikvah. Why? Because any water that goes through this pipe is considered mayim she'uvim. It had a shame kli on it, and you attached it to the ground. However, kavu, if you took the piece of wood, you would kaveh it in the ground. Ulebesayv kakaku, and when it was in the ground, then you went ahead and dug it out. Einu paislas a mikvah. It doesn't pass lo mikvah. The amit shinoi hashem milsahi. If you can tell me Shini Hashem is something, afilu kavu l'b'sleif chakaku nami lifso. Even if you kaveh in the ground and the end chakaku, it also should go ahead and passel. Even if you went ahead and you kaveh in the ground, right? Even if you went ahead and you stuck it, you went ahead, you took it in the ground, and what did you do when it was in the ground? You went ahead and you dug it out. Guys, Shini Hashem, if I go ahead and I put it in the ground, what's it now? It's a piece of ground, right? And now I hollowed it out. So it went from a piece of ground, a piece of eights, and you changed the name to what? A pipe. So why, if you put it in the ground, would it not be considered mayim shuvim? If you're telling me, guys, Shini Hashem means it now is a different thing. So no longer is it a piece of eights, it's a kli. So if it's a kli, what's the difference if it's outside or inside or in the ground? In other words, now it's a pipe. If it's a pipe, then what should it then be? Mayim shuvim. Again, if you hold Shini Hashem is nothing, then it's a piece of wood. It's not a kli. Okay, but now you're telling me that who cares when you hollowed it out? It should make a difference. The act of what's it called now? Is it called a tziner? Yeah, it's called a tziner. It should pass als mayim shuvim, despite the fact that it's attached to the ground. That's what the Gemara's kashet. If you're going to say gabi gazela, if you steal something and you call it something else, it makes it yours. Then afilu kavu l'b'sleif chaku nami lifsol. It also should pass the mikvah. Why? Because now, even through the act of chakika, through the act of hollowing it out, this piece of wood, the kriyas Hashem, now it's called what? Eight sinor, and it should pass. The Gemara answers shiny shiva the midrabanan he einachinami. It should, but the reason, since mayim shuvim is only the rabbanon, so here we're going to be mekel. So really, shini milsa is something, and really, it should be considered a pipe. But since le'inya mayim shuvim is the rabbanon, we're mekel. Ihachi of being mekel, I feel the reisha nami. Even when it was disattached, before you put it to the ground, right? It should be what? It should be not mayim shuvim. It says hasam over there. Ikataris kliyalav betalush. Hacha ain't teres kliyalav betalush. Okay, it's outside. Eye contact outside. You tell me Shina Maisa is Shina Hashem is something. If I'm going to call this the tziner, then any water passing through it should be considered shuvim. Therefore, it should not make a difference if I went ahead and created the tziner over here, or I put it in the ground and created the tziner over there. The Gemara says, you're right. You're right. There shouldn't be a difference. But you know what? Since shuvim is only the rabbanon, we were makel, and therefore we said, if it's attached to the ground and you hollow it out, then it's okay. Fred the Gemara, if you're being makel, even when it's a disattached from the ground, when it was a piece of wood, you hollowed it out and you put it in the ground, it also shouldn't passel. It's only the Rabbanon. What's the difference between the two? Says the Gemara, beautiful chiluk. If I have this disattached from the ground and I hollow it out, before it goes in the ground, it has a din of kli. It's called a kli right now. So therefore, any water that's in it, very, very appropriate, any water that's in it is considered shuvim. On the other hand, if I put it in the ground and then I hollow it out, it never had a time where it was considered a kli until it was in the ground. And therefore, only there they were makel, but not when it was a Torah's kli, when it was disattached from the ground. But vis-a-vis the halacha of shini koina, or shini shem, einachinami, the kriyas Hashem is something. Mesiveh, Haganif, the Hagazlin, we know what that is. On anos, that's a chamsin. That's a person who takes something and gives you money for it. Chamas. Hegdish and hegdish. If they magdish something, it's kodesh. The trumason, if they steal grain, their truma is truma. Umaiser say a meiser, and their meiser is meiser. So what do you see? What do you see? That shina is koina. Fellas, if in order to be magdish something, you have to be the balabas. In order to go ahead and separate truma, you have to be the balabas. So you have a raya that shina is koina. I mean, hasam ikus shina Hashem. There again, it's not shina. It's not. So it's a kashan of Yosef. Says the Gemara there. I kept on saying shina, guys. I meant yish. Guys, yish. Excuse me, yish. You see yish again. Ganif, Gazlin. Again, we're not being nichlis to the machlokes we saw by Kalim. It seems this Mishnah, everybody holds that. This the Tosefta and Trumas, everyone seems to hold there's no difference in the Ganif and the Gazlan vis-a-vis Yish. And the Chamsin, all of them, so l'chor them yayish. And the fact that once you see that the Ganif, Gazlan, or the Chamsin could go ahead and be magdashit or separate Trumas and Meiser from it, he must be the Balabas. How did he become the Balabas? It must be because Yish is koina. Says the Gemara, no, Yish alone is not koina, but Hasam Ikushini Hashem. The Mikora Tivla, initially it was called Tevel, untithed the Hashta Truma. Hegdish, initially it was called Hegdish, Meikara, and now Hegdish, Meikara Chulin, the Hashta Hegdish. Hegdish, initially it was Chulin, and now it's Hegdish. There's a big kash on this, guys. There's a kash on this. In order for the kinyan to take place, you need the Yush and the Shina Rishus to take place before the act of Hegdish. Over here, it's the act of Hegdish, the act of Truma, the act of Maisa that is creating the Shini Hashem. In other words, usually what you do is the following. You would go ahead, steal something, right? And then you go ahead and you do something to it. You change the name, you do something to it, and then you acquire it and do whatever you want with it. Where's the sheet? It's the act here of what he's doing with it that's creating the name change. It's not 1 + 1 = something. It's 1 and then the something. Let's make it again. It whatever you're saying. So you're going to say it's Hegdish, right? So now what happens when you do Hegdish? You had Shini Hashem right then and there, right? So why should it be Hegdish? All you have is Yush. You would need the following: Yush, then a Shini Hashem, and then I could be Magdish. It's your act of Hegdish that's creating the Shini Hashem. That's the problem with it. I mean, that's the rate over here. Rav Chisda, Rav Yonason, Minayin l'Shina Shu Kaina. Well, we had this Gemara already. How do you know Shina is Kaina? Shnemar, the Heshiv is a Gzela, right? If it says you should return the Gzela, Matambalem Asher Gozal. I mean, say Heshiv is a Gzela Asher Gozal. Obviously, if it's Gzela, it's a Gozal. What's Asher Gozal? It's totally extraneous. Imkain Shegazal Yachzer. That teaches me if it's in the same state it was as you stole it, then you return it. Vim lav. But if there was a shinoi, damim ba'alma boy shlomi, then you only have to pay money. Okay. Now a little piece of information, guys. We said a person who swears falsely and admits to it, right? He's entrusted with something, swears falsely and admits to it, has to pay a keren, a surcharge of a quarter, right? And bring a kashim asham ilos. Yeah. What happens if he dies? What happens if he dies? What does the Yorshim have to do? that the Yoshim have to pay Keren V'chaimish. An Ashim they don't have to bring. An Ashim they don't have to bring. It's Ashim Shemesa Baleha, right? What's the din? Yiroah Sheyitztavu, right? Until it gets grazes, until it gets the mum. So now the question is, do they have to pay the Chaimish? Says the Gemara, how could you use Asher Gozal to teach me that Shini is Kana? Asher Gozal mi boile. I need it for something else. Lemute Gezel Aviv Shena Meisav Chaimish. Al Gezel Aviv. I needed that the father stole and swore falsely to that fact that they don't have to pay the Chaimish, right? So once they don't have to pay the Chaimish, and then I need Asher Gozal mashma that he stole and not that they're paying for what, but their father stole. So how can I use it to teach me Shina is Kaina? Says Gemara in Cain, if all the pasuk Asher Gozal was coming to teach me is that your father you don't have to pay the chaimish for, nichtav rachman the heshav is gezeloi, return his gezeloi. Asher Gozal, in other words, you wouldn't have to say the extra words Asher Gozal. V'heshav, it says v'heshav es gezela. It could have said v'heshav es gezeloi, and he returns his gezel, the mashma the father and not the kids. When it says Asher Gozal, the extra words Asher Gozal, lamali. Lemichtav, why do you have to write it? Shmamina tarti. From here you hear two things. Why do you hear? One, Gesel Aviv, and two, that Shina is Kaina. Now, Ikka the army, there's another dialogue. Amar Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yonason, Minayin l'Shina she'ena Kaina. Having a Shina is not Kaina. Shenemar, v'heshiv es ha'gazela, mikal malkaim. What does it say? V'heshiv es ha'gazela. Wherever it is, you return it. No matter what. Whatever state it's in, you return it. Mikal malkaim. It's changed. I don't care. Why? Because Shino is not Kaina. The Heshva Zela. Now, mashma only you return it if it's in that state of what, how you stole it. Says Gemara, who me boile? I need Asher Gozal for the limud. Al Gazela Shalai Maisiv Faimish. So according to the second in the army, Shini is not Kaina, and I use Asher Gozal to teach me the din of Gazela Saviv. According to the first lesson, Shini is Kaina, and I hear both halachas from the words Asher Gozal. You hear about Shini is Kaina, and you hear that Gazela if you don't have to pay the Chaimish. Okay, Rabbi Yosef said Shini is what is Shini is Kaina. Ama Ula, I keep on saying Shini. That Yeyosh is not Kaina. According to Rabbi Yosef, Yeyosh is not Kaina. Ama Ula minayin leYeyosh sheina Kaina. How do you know Yeyosh is not Kaina? How do you know Yeyosh is not Kaina? Shenamar. Okay, this is a pasuk in Malachi. Pasuk says, "Ve'amartem hine matlo'ov hipachtem Isai Omer Hashem tzvokos v'avesim gozel v'esapiseach v'esachayla v'avesim esamincha ha'artza oisim v'yetchem Amar Hashem." If you bring these as karbanis, gozel, piseach, chayla, piseach means a hinkedika. We don't have Kenny to translate the Yiddish, so I'll do it for you. A cripple. Right. Vesachayla, the sick one. Now we juxtapose this a gozel as a piseach. Gozel dumya de piseach. Ma piseach the lesle takanta. There's nothing you can do about it. Klal on the base. Af gezel the lesle takanta. So to gezel there's no takana. Now, loishna lifnei yish, loishna lachi yish. There's no takana, so you see a riot. Yish what is not kaina. Now, be aware, there's a really big taisus over here. Rabbeinu Tam holds that Ula says is only the by karbanis. No, it's according to Yosef, yish is never kaina. According to Ula, yish is not kaina by karbanis. Rabbeinu Tam, well, only by because look at his rayas from karbanis. But ain't kanami all over yish is kaina. There's a big taisus with marmakaimis, different places. Again, we're not doing it. Beyond the scope of the share, but I gave you what?
I did notice it, by the way.
Yeah. Again, in learning, you should be aware it's always the small taisus that are problematic. The large ones, they're just bringing in Bekias from other places to ask questions. Okay, Rava Amar Mehacha. Rava brings an other source for Yush not being Kaina. It says in Oyla Karbanoi Minabaka, right? Minabaka Zacha Tomim Yakrivenu. Now, karbanoi, v'lo gazel, meaning what? Your carbon and not gazel. Now, we brought this in yesterday, you might remember. And who would he bring it in from? We brought it in the same Rava, correct? So, Rava said, what did Rava answer yesterday, guys? It's not speaking about an animal of chulin that you were magdish, because you can't be magdish an animal of chulin. Right? A person can be magdish davar sheina shaloi. Good. So it must be speaking that what? It must be speaking after it's a carbon. That even though you stole a carbon, you can't bring it. But okay, so now, when exactly would you bring this carbon? Before Yish Pshita. Why do you need a pasuk? It was a top toisus yesterday. Even the Magdashit, it's not kodesh because Shnayim Shenim Yachal L'Kodesh Zesh Shenim Shaloi Zelafi Shenim B'Shusai. So obviously, it can't be speaking before Yish. So it must be Elalav L'Acha Yish. It must be speaking after Yish. And the pasuks come to tell me Shmamina Yish like Kana. Shmamina Yish is not Kana, right? Because if it was Kana, then you could L'Chayra, you could be bringing this a carbon. Shmamina, it's a good raya. 1 second. But Rabbi who the Amar the Guzzle carbon the Chavre. Rav is the one who told us yesterday. Guys, look back. Look back. Samich Vav Amid Beis. That's 6 lines down. Esve Abaya L'Rava. Abaya asks Rava, Karbanov Le Guzzle, Hekidam Ilim Lifnei Yish Nam Likra, Pshita. Alav Lacha Yish, Mamina Yish Le Kana. Amlech Rava ul Taimech. Rava says to Abaye, and according to your reasoning, Hadatanya, by the case of Zav, you're going to say that that it's speaking where he stole something and he stole wool and he made it into a skin. No one holds that Shin is not Kaina. Why do you have to say that he stole a bed? He stole what? He stole the carbon. And Rashi in his first lashon said, if he stole an existing carbon, the chiddush is if he brings it, it's not oil for the bow. Guys, carbonoi means the following. He stole the carbon and he brought it. So you might think that it goes for the original lona. Kamash Malon, it doesn't. Now, when Rava brought this raya yesterday, he was bringing a raya that Yish is kaina. He was bringing a raya that Yish is kaina. That's why he said, you want to bring me a raya Yish is not kaina by the fact that it's speaking you stole chulin after Yish and you can't bring it as a carbon. So Rava said, no, it's not speaking in that case. It's speaking in a case where what? Where you stole an existing carbon. And if you bring it, it doesn't count for the Baal. Now, why did Rabbi bring that? Because Rabbi obviously held that Yish is Kaina. So Fred the Gemara Kasha over here, Rabbi who the Ama Gezel carbon the Chavre, he's the one who said that it's speaking with carbona where he stole this from carbon, mashma that what he's coming to Mataris that Yish is Kaina. He had Charata, and he holds Yish is not Kaina. He by Yisema Chad Minayu is Rav Papa. One of them Rav Papa said. Taisus brings that Rav Papa was a Talmud of Rava, and people mistake him. The Bach brings it. Look at the Bach. The Molach Basa Abaya for Rava. Rav Papa was the Rosh Hashiva after the Abaya for Rava. Kenkas Taisus B'Shvuis. Okay, so that's okay. So now we have Ula saying Yish is not Kaina. He brings his source from Malachi. Because we compare a carbon of a stolen carbon to a carbon that is what a cripple or has a mum. A carbon has a mum that's in a chayzer can never be bought as a carbon. So to a carbon that is stolen can never be bought as a carbon. Okay. The final din of the Mishnah the final din, not the final din. Excuse me. So how do we get to here so far? We got here so far is that Meruba midas tashlume kefil midas dalad. That kefil is noigwat by everything, is by everything, and Dalad Behei is only noted by what Shabbos Belvad. Now the Gemara is going to ask the question: why do you learn Shar from Shabbos, guys? The din of resting your animals in Shabbos, is that only unique to a Shar or a Seh or a Chamar? No, it's universal, right? It's universal. So why don't we learn at the same thing that just like over there by Shabbos it means any animal, so to the din of Dalad Behei means any animal. So again, it's important to know the pasuk that. Kiyignav ish. This is in Shmois Aleph pasuk lamed zayin. Kiyignav shar ish shar oiseh. If a person steals a shar or a seh, utevachai oimecharoi, and he shechts it or he sells it, chamisha baki yishalim tachas ashar. You'll pay 5 for the shar. Va'arba tzoyin tachas aseh. Okay. So how much times does it say in the pasuk shar and seh? 4 times. If you steal a shar or a seh, you're going to pay 5 for the shar and 4 for the seh. So it says it 4 times. Says the Gemara. Umidas tashlumi abba v'chemisha. Why is that noyig what by every other animal as well? Neilif Shar Shame Shabbos. Let's learn by Shabbos where it says like Sasu Kamalacha V'Sharcha V'Chamarcha, and we learn up not only Shar V'Chamar but even Chayav V'Oif also you have to rest. So Mala Halon, just like by Shabbos, it's Chayav V'Oif Kiyotze Behen Le'inyan resting your animals. A Chay and Oif are also in the ballpark. Afkan, so too by the din of Daled V'Hei. Chayav V'Oif Kiyotze Behen. So Fred the Gemara, that din that you said in the Mishnah that Daled V'Hei is only known by Shabbos, let's learn from Shabbos that it's known what by every animal. Amarav Amakra Shabbos Shnei Pamim. Right? It says it twice. Why? Shar in Shabbos in Midiach Min Eloi. But the fact that it's repeated in the pasuk, right? It's unnecessary to repeat it the second time. The reason it repeats it, well, we're going to see which one is extra, right? The reason it repeats is to stress that what dafka b'Shabbos and not all over. Ami Hamiyasa. Which one of the Shabbos says is extra? The first part of the pasuk or the second part of the pasuk? Ilema Shabbos said the Seifa is miyaser. And Nichta Rachmana, the Torah should have written, Ki Yignaiv Ish Shar Oiseh Utavachai Mecharoi Chamisha Baki Shalim Tachtov Ve'arbot Soin Tachtov. So, in other words, leave out the Shabbos in the Seifa. Says the Gemara, Efsha, right? It's not possible, Rachmana, to Ikos Rachmana Hachi. If the Torah would have left out the Shabbos Chamar in the Seifa, you know what I would have said that you pay 5 and 4. Avamina Boy Shlumei Tishel Echol Echad V'Echad. You'd have to pay what? 9 for each one. Anyone who goes ahead and shechs a shor or a seh, you have to pay what? 5 bakar and 4 tzayin. You have to pay 5 bakar and 5 tzayin. The chitema haksiv. It says in the Torah tachtov pamayim twice. So how could you have the havamina that what you're going to pay 9? It says merchat tachtav miyaser. One is extra. One is extra, and therefore you only. Since one is extra, I can't darshan both significantly, just 5 for this one and 4 for that one. So what's it extra? Humi boy le lidrash achrina detanya yachol ganav shar v'shavamana. I might think if you go ahead and steal a shard that's worth $100, Yishalim tachtov negidin, you can pay him back a bunch of shvarim that equal $100, but each one is a weak animal. It says it twice, and one of them is extra to teach me that has to be similar to that one that you took. So Mamela, if I needed extra to teach me that, it's not the extra to teach me 5 for this one and 4 for that one. So therefore, obviously, that's not the Sharvaseh unnecessary in the Seifa. Ella must be Sharvaseh the Reisha. Miyaser must be the Shar and the Seh of the Reisha are extra. The Nichla Rachmana, the Torah should write, if a person steals and shechs and sells, and we can infer that what if you're paying 5 for the shar and 4 for the seh, it must be in the reisha. What did he steal? He stole the shar v'seh. So the fact that he wrote it is extra to teach me that dafka shar v'seh and not what learn from Shabbos to include all animals. Says the Gemara, no, because Rachmana Hachi Hava Amina. I would say you're not chayiv on the tficha until you go ahead steal both a shar and a seh, and you go ahead and shech both the shar and the seh. If you didn't write kigna, if you didn't write, I would think that you'd have to go ahead in order to be chayiv. You have to do both. You steal a shar and a seh, and you shech or sell a shar and a seh. Says the Gemara, how could you possibly think that? It says utfachoy mashma. Tfacha is lashon yachid. Only one of them. L'chad. The Amish at the gun of Travayu Masvanle, merely you steal both of them and sell both of them. Says the Gemara, Machrei Ksiv L'chad. It says one. So l'chayra, you can't tell me that's the Havamina. In other words, you can't tell me you had a right Sharvasa and the Reisha because you would have thought you have to steal both of them. Of course, when it says Tevachoyu Macharoi, it's obviously only one of them. So l'chayra, it is extra. L'chayra, it is extra. The Amish says the Gemara Havamina. If you didn't write it in the Reisha at the gun of Trey until you steal both animals, the Shar and the Seh. The toch of chad masvin chad, you shecht one, and that's tfachay, and umachroi, and you sell the other. Oy machroi ksiv, right? Says the Gemara machroi ksiv. Says if it says machroi, how could you have to have a meaning that what you would have to go ahead and shecht one and sell one? Says machroi. The kati have a mina. If you didn't write it in the reisha at the gun of travayu, you steal a shar v'seh the toch of chad mishayach chad, oy masvin chad mishayach chad, or you go ahead what. And you sell one and you leave one over. So therefore, it must be you need Shavaseh, you need both of them. So therefore, the two in the sefer are not extra, the two in the ratio are not extra, right? So how can you tell me they're extra to teach me dafka shor b'seh and not all the animals? Says Gemara, Ella the following. Ella, the shor the sefer b'seh the ratio miyaser. It's like you thought it's a pair, right? You thought it's either both the ratio or the sefer. No. The shor and the sefer is extra and the seh and the ratio is extra. The nichtav achmana, it should have written the following. Ki yignav ish shor utavachai umecharoi. Chamisha baki shalim tachtav, va'arbet soin tachas aseh. So you write shor in the ratio, you wouldn't write seh, and read the pasuk. If you steal a shor and you shecht it or sell it, you're chayav 5 times, and 4 if it's a seh. So because you didn't seh in the ratio. Shor the sefer v'shed the ratio lamali shema mina. It's to teach me what shor v'seh in. Midiachrina loy. Dafka Shabbos midiachrina.